all, welcome back to another video. This is video number 14, part B, more discussing visual analysis. In the last video, I talked about some ways that you can think about visual analysis. Again, you can find this PowerPoint under the Readings tab on Blackboard. And what I want to do with this video is I want to talk about some potential images and talk a little bit about what some potential observations are. Whenever you find an image to analyze or you're looking at, you want to write down a list of observations about it. So if I was in the physical classroom, I would maybe show an image on the projector, and I would ask my students to take a few moments to write down whatever they were observing. So what I would advise doing at this point is maybe pausing this video with as many of these images that you can, write down your observations about what you notice and what you see. So I kind of walked through my observations of the last image. This one, the next few are also a little bit easier, but I'm going to try and have a wide variety of different images that you could potentially look at to try to help you maybe think about what kind of image you might want to analyze for your essay number 2. So pause this right now, and pause before I talk about every video. Write down your own observations, and then maybe compare them with what I say and see if there's anything that you missed or anything that I missed. I'm going to talk about a lot what my previous students in the past, when I did teach in person before the pandemic, kind of talked about. And actually, in the spring 2020 semester, right before the pandemic started, this was my last class period I was in the classroom with, where I kind of brought up different images on the board and we talked about them. And so that was March of 2020, and that was the last time I was in the classroom because of the pandemic. So I wish we could be in the classroom again. It's a little bit bizarre. It's been that long. But for this image, it is an image, the audience, you want to think of, ask yourself who the audience is and what the purpose is. So the audience, a lot of times my students will say it's drivers or parents. So there's two different ones. So drivers, the purpose of the image is to persuade people to pay attention when they're driving. For drivers, that's really anybody. Pay attention, to the child in front of you if there is one, in the street. For a parent, it's more specific because you have the rear view mirror with their own, the people driving, it's their child in the back seat, and you can see their eyes. And it's covering the eyes of the child in front of them that they're about to hit. And so it's trying to persuade the parents to think about, sorry about that, it's trying to persuade the parents to think about, well, what if it was my kid? Well, what if? And a lot of so that's kind of the purpose. How I would be doing that is you could think about the color. I have a student who says like it's very gray toned, a little bit more depressing. It's not very colorful. It's not very vibrant. You have colors, but they're very dull. You have the driver who is on their cell phone. It looks like they're being older BlackBerry. They're looking to the person in the driver's seat or the passenger seat who has their hands just kind of looking in the direction of the driver, looking at them, holding a map, which I've always thought was outdated. And so that the style of the cell phone and the fact that they're holding a map can tell you a little bit how older it is. So might be before smartphones were around as much. I'm thinking maybe like somewhere in the 2000s. I mean, I didn't even get my first phone in general until 2007. I didn't get my first smartphone until much later. And so smartphones can be really helpful because they have, tracking on them, Google Maps or Waze. Obviously, they don't hold technology at the moment that's going to tell them they have to look at a map and the driver's talking on their phone. And so it's before that technology is either invented or accessible to them in terms of cost. And so something like that. You have the child, in a school uniform, with a backpack, and walking across the street, eyes wide open, shocked. The child in the back seat doesn't seem to be that shocked. It's just eyes, can't see their mouth or expression. Their eyes just kind of are a little relaxed. You have the words think of both sides. The words think of are gray and both sides are orange. And so emphasis on the words both sides. And so both sides being not just the child in the back seat, yours, but think of other people's children as your own. Don't, if you're going to also pay attention to your child, you would want their parents want you to pay attention to your child. I've had students before bring up like a little signs that they've seen in their neighborhood, like drive like your child lives here. And I think that's a sentiment that they're trying to invoke. And so if you were to analyze this image for paper, you could think about some type of emotion. So like the audience, you could think about parents or drivers. So you could analyze maybe how does the image persuade parents to maybe like pay attention to the road, or emotionally think about other children. How would a parent feel if they were looking at this? Would it be effective or ineffective? And so really asking those questions. I had one student write a paper on this a few years ago, and for this paper, I think there was just enough maybe to string by with an essay, but they know they did struggle and to actually find enough information to do it. But I like this image for the purpose of this PowerPoint, because it does allow you to really kind of easily think about when I have other classes online, and I'm trying to teach what audience and purpose mean. It's really easy, people can very easily understand what the audience and the purpose is. Similar to the picture on slide 15. This one is from PETA. PETA is an organization that promotes going vegan. They try to persuade people to go vegan. Some of their advertisements, a lot of their advertisements are what one could call problematic. If you want to look for more, you can just Google PETA ads and you'll find more. This is one of their least graphic ones, so I chose this one. They say you wouldn't let your child smoke, and that's in very large letters, very bold, black, large letters. And the words like smoking, eating bacon, sausages, and other processed meats is linked to cancer. You have a child who's smoking a cigar and reading a very large book. Looks like to be some type of picture book. And so what I would like to ask you now to think about yourself is, where do your eyes go towards first? Do they go to the child? Do they go to the you wouldn't let your child smoke? They go to the cancer slogan, or they go to the PETA down below. And there's so much going on here. All of you might tell me a different answer. But wherever your answer might be, why do you think your eyes were drawn to that specific idea first? Why do you have the kind of the child in the light blue sweatshirt, which is tied to the PETA, background of the PETA. There's really not a lot of color going on beyond that, but they're trying to connect that through the color. And whenever I talk to students in the classroom, a lot of them say that it's ineffective because they're trying to persuade a meat eater to give up eating meat. But there's logic here. It's like smoking, eating bacon, sausages, and other processed meats is linked to cancer. A lot of times when I talk to students in the classroom about this image, they say that it's logic that doesn't make sense, and so it's failed logic because they're trying to equate smoking to eating meat in terms of cancer. When smoking, everybody can, or a lot of people understand, if you smoke, you probably, or you might get cancer later in life. But that doesn't really make sense to somebody in regards to meat. How does eating meat go with cancer? So a lot of my students in the past have said maybe they need to provide more information about what that might look like, information about how meats provide cancer. But because they don't provide that information, it just kind of looks ridiculous, right? And so for a lot of meat eaters that I know, and if they're trying to persuade a vegan, well, they are already vegan. They don't need to be persuaded. And so their audience here is people who already eat meat, and it's not going to work. So this is an example in the rhetoric PowerPoints I talked about. You can have a failed rhetoric. It doesn't work for the audience. This is an example of that. So you might have some other observations about this image, things that you noticed, but in general, I like to have this image just an example of what failed rhetoric might look like. The next image is an older image on slide 16. It's an older Tide ad. You don't have to use this advertisement, but I wanted to throw an example of like an older advertisement because I do have some students who, write about older advertisements. There's a lot going on here. It's almost too busy for my eyes when I first look at it. I really don't know where to look first. There's so much. Tide's got what women want at the very top in smaller letters. No wonder you women buy more Tide than any other wash day product. To me, as a woman in 2021, the phrase "you women" is a little bit off-putting. I'm like, no wonder you women. Like, what? So that it just feels a little bit off-putting. But this wasn't produced in the 21st century. This seems like it might have been the 50s, maybe the 60s. I might be wrong about that, but it's definitely older. So what you could do if you found in older advertisements, if you could analyze or compare and contrast the time period. So how would an audience in that time period it was produced, how would they feel towards this image? Would they feel less off-put? Would they feel the same way that I discussed it, I do now? Maybe you have a different reaction when you look at this image. Maybe it's a little bit different than the off-putting I feel when I read "no women." They're trying to persuade somebody to buy Tide. I have seen a lot more productive Tide ads that don't involve gender, because not just women do laundry. My boyfriend does laundry too. we gotta work together to do the chores, and so it's not just a woman's task. But back then it was advertised as laundry, housework is a woman's task, which isn't necessarily the case anymore. So a lot of color, a lot of orange, a lot of kind of bright orange, because that's what the Tide box looks like. I think that's still the case today. And also it's for people who could afford Tide. Tide is expensive. I mean, even today, Tide's one of the most expensive laundry detergents out there. And so it's somebody who can afford that. And that's also the case. And you have this graphic down here. I can even barely read it. There's a lot going on. It's very busy. But that's kind of an example of an older advertisement. You could think about that. I have a few images that discuss older images. If you wanted to analyze a historic image, this you may have seen in maybe like an image or like an art class or something. And originally when I started teaching this image, a lot of my students had no idea like the history behind it. This is a photograph taken 1945, kind of right after World War II. They were coming back. A lot of the people in the military, specifically Navy here, were coming back after the war. And in the Life magazine where it was published, the author wrote, "In the middle of New York's Times Square, a white-clad girl clutches her purse and skirt as an uninhibited sailor plants his little Australian herds." It's older image. It was kind of taken at the spur of the moment, so this wasn't planned. And so I think there's a difference between images like the ones I just showed before, like the Tide ad, or even the PETA image, where they're definitely planning it. It's planned meticulously. They have an audience in mind, and they're doing it very intentionally. Images like this are different because it wasn't planned. Photographers just happened to be there and they took the photo. You have a lot of different lines going on. Just an example of lines. Her posture. The people in the background are kind of lines as well, and all of that can be used as evidence. But when I teach this in the classroom, I do have some students who think of it as very romanticized. This is an image that represents love and happiness, and a lot of people think that the woman and the man know each other. Maybe they're married, maybe they're dating, and they love each other. But in real life, they actually didn't know each other, and he just ran up to her randomly and kissed her. And you see this in the body language. She is kind of clutching her dress. His arm is kind of around her neck in very, like, I don't know, in a way that doesn't seem comfortable. And so a lot of the body language, and she actually came out and said that this woman, much later, decades later after this picture was taken, that they did not know each other. And so that is a confirmed fact. But in the image itself, there is a lot of evidence in her body language that suggests that no, they didn't know each other. And so it becomes this image that has this theme of love and romance to a much more uncomfortable kind of feeling. Some other images here. This image is a lot older. If you ever watch Lovecraft Country, it's on HBO, they actually reference these images here. So the first one is an image that says world's highest standard of living. There's no way like the American way, and you got like a happy family. And this is they're advertising a car. It's an older image. You got the kind of like the two kids and the parents very happy. They look like they have a dog kind of hanging out the window, and they're just very happy. Switch to this image, which is another image that was taken by happenstance in 1937. It was taken after a flood in Louisville, Kentucky. Also published in Life magazine. But you have definitely these this is an example of binary opposition in an image. You have the kind of lower class on the bottom waiting in line, and they just got everything taken from them. It was a flood. They're waiting in line for supplies after this horrible thing happened. And the top you have these people, it's fictional life, and so binary opposition, if you remember from the Rhetoric PowerPoints, it's two ideas that are opposite each other. So you have devastation and lack of supplies here, and you have lack of money, you have lots of money. You have black, you have white, and you have real life, and you have fiction. So as this is an advertisement, these people, they're probably not even a family, they're all actors. And so it's not real life. And so these are both examples of America, but they're very different examples of America. And so what I like about this image is the lines there are very specific. You have it's very moving image because there's these two different examples of America going on in the 30s. Of course, when there's a plethora of hardship going on at that time. So that's an example too. And I have another example here. This is an example of a CD cover. I don't really have a lot of time in this video because this video is already longer than I wanted to. So I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit in the next video. But the next video, video number 14, part C, I'm going to talk about the assignment that you want to do and a little bit about this video here.